I slowly processed everything he said as I asked him. So what you were saying is you had to bear all the responsibilities while I sat at home gridlocked? Mark Cuna's casual shrug was infuriatingly convincing. We thought you had enough on your plate, he said. It felt like he was trying to justify their betrayal, which he didn't need to. You have been crashing at Jessica's for long enough. You didn't need the house. Our assumption was to sell the place, split the money, and shift ahead. Shifting ahead? I mumbled. My tone was raspy. What should I move on from? Is it from the last memory we have of Mom and Dad? Is it from the place we were raised in? Do you really think that putting a house on the market will erase everything? Mark appeared surprisingly quite confused. His voice was softer than Mark's. Closing his eyes for a moment, he continues, It's tough the way it is, but life moves on. Mark, looking utterly out of their element, nervously furrows his brows. House is gone now, but the money will always remain, Ava puts in. The anger began to reach my lungs, but I shook my head, looking Mark dead in the eyes. What the last memory you and your family have collectively together is. You truly sold the house for money? Did you even care about any of the things I brought up? It's really disgusting how simple you go about things. That was our last remnant as a family. For what? A couple of extra bucks in your savings accounts? You have made me homeless. I could never have imagined this. We didn't intend on having these consequences, said Ava, fidgeting in her chair. I abandoned my hopes just to think about the present. But guess what? It did happen, I replied angrily. What do you want me to say? Thank you for giving me everything, and in return, you've taken everything away from me. So, how do you expect me to feel? We spent what seemed like eternity talking to one another, and when we had concluded, we had no resolution. I did not receive anyone's apology in any meaningful way. As I departed from the coffee shop, I felt enraged and extremely lost. What is the point to this? How did I get to a stage where I am left feeling like a ghost? I have so many questions, but nobody around me seems to have the answers. In the forthcoming days, I spent wandering around in uncertainty, thinking about how I will tackle what comes next. Trying to figure out my next steps was impossible since my funds were getting depleted. Plus, I couldn't stay at Jessica's place forever. The house had been sold, and on top of that, the money was divided equally between those two, Mark and Ava. No idea made me excited, considering I would always be met with a wall. I debated whether I should get legal representation and attempt to claim my share of the proceeds from the house sale. However, I didn't even know where to start. From what I understood, Mark and Ava had everything sorted out, legally speaking, and I didn't even know if I would have a case. They had the upper hand, and I had no idea about the financial matters. I felt helpless. As I sat trying to think straight in the small park near Jessica's apartment one afternoon, I received a text from Ava. I could not believe my eyes while reading the text. Hello. We've been talking, and we feel really sorry about what happened regarding the house. We know you were angry, and that was never our intention. If it makes a difference, we are prepared to give you a small percentage of the money. We need to discuss this. My palms were sweaty due to confusion and anger as I looked at the notification. A mere portion of the money? Did they just do me a favor? It's not like they just sold the house I grew up in without informing me, right? It was an entire offense. It seemed as though they were paying me off in order to make the issue go away and clear their own conscience. To me, it wasn't just about the money. It was also about feeling betrayed and knowing that I no longer had a home within my family. Instead of responding to Ava's text, I turned off my phone and proceeded to the park and started people watching. For the first time in my life, I felt extremely isolated. My siblings had left me and recklessly sold the only thing which connected me to my parents, and they expect me to just deal with the situation. Absolutely not. I wouldn't just take it. I wouldn't allow myself to be brushed off with what is essentially a token payment. They had robbed me completely, and there was no way I was going to go without putting up a fight. I called a lawyer that night. Remember how I said it was like anything I touched started to decay? This lawyer's office felt just like that. Cold, sterile, painfully devoid of any warmth and comfort. Everything that I had lost. This is why I felt the flicker of hope while sitting in front of Rachel. She seemed like a prominent lawyer, and I could tell she was going to help me. Maybe there was something that could be done to right this terrible wrong in a better way. Rachel was sharp and straightforward. Having practiced family law for many years, she had certainly seen it all. And when I told her that Mark and Ava did sell the house without telling me and that I was now homeless, she didn't seem surprised at all. She didn't even blink. Actually, she looked way too comfortable for my taste and concerned for her sanity. Did I understand correctly that none of the decisions were made in your presence? She asked me casually while making notes. Rachel's face turned serious, and she nodded. Depends on how the house was left to you and your siblings. Legally, if your parents dictated that the property was to be shared amongst the three of you, then they would need your permission in order to dispose it. If the house was only titled and named to Mark and Ava after probate, you may have a tougher battle and had to fight, she said. Do you know what the will said? I know, I said slowly. The paperwork was such a blur, funeral arrangements, the overwhelming grief, and the endless paperwork. I'm uncertain. But I do know all three of us were bequeathed the house. Rachel raised an eyebrow. That could be where the problem lies. If your name was on the deed, then they shouldn't have been able to close the transaction without your authorization. If, however, they did succeed in having the house transferred to their names only, they might have discovered a legal loophole. I stumbled at the words that came out of her mouth. Then what is the game plan? Rachel fixed her gaze on me. First, we need to dig up the title and see what was done with it. If your siblings are truly unscrupulous, there is a possibility for a lawsuit. At the least, we might be able to get a portion of the money from the sale. But this is going to require quite a lot of time and effort. I gave a nod that signified my agreement, but I felt both dreaded and determined at the same time. This isn't where I wanted to be, and I certainly didn't want to take my family to court. But what choice was I left with? I surely could not ignore such actions. I am ready, I said with a low voice. I'm willing to go to extremes. Rachel and I started reviewing the documents over the next few weeks. She gathered property deeds, assured bank accounts, and even probate documents. Mark and Ava's finances were like a jigsaw puzzle, and we were slowly assorting it piece by piece. What we uncovered corroborated my deepest fears. It seemed that legal bullying, to some extent, had allowed Mark and Ava to fully sideline me. Somehow, they had managed to transfer the deed into their names after our parents passed, cutting me out entirely. Devastating does not even come close to how I felt seeing the betrayal in its purest form. Against all odds, Rachel kept defying the odds. She systematically filed a lawsuit on my behalf, arguing that I was unjustly omitted and forcibly set aside from the profits. She made it very clear that the legal battle is not going to be easy, but told me that the best course of action is indeed filing the lawsuit. Through it all, I fought to stay afloat. I oscillated between staying at Jessica's place and couch surfing with friends and felt more lost than I had ever been. It was not just the house that I had lost, there was also my family. Every passing day without Mark or Ava reaching out felt like another dismantling to our already fragile relationship. It was a mess, and now more than anything, I was no longer hopeful for an apology. A part of me wished that I never had to see either of them ever again. I was all by myself now, the mess was my responsibility now, and the resistance was only just starting. Some months later, the actual court proceedings kicked off. I don't think Mark and Ava ever intended to settle any differences. Hiring their own lawyers and battling in the courtrooms was their preferred style. The courtroom felt cold and distant, yet the energy between all of us felt alive. I stood there not being able to comprehend that it had boiled down to this. My own siblings sitting before me with varying emotions, from self-satisfied to angry. Ava didn't even have the shame to face me, and Mark sat there with his arms folded and his lips curled into a smile as if all of this was a joke to him. Rachel articulated the case in a systematic manner and assuredly presented it. She laid out in my absence, Mark and Ava joining forces to manipulate the process of probate and gain control of the family home in its entirety, doing away with me in the process. She had proof, documents indicating the change of household ownership, support emails between the two discussing the sale, and even other records showing that money was withdrawn from accounts without any intention of sharing it with me. The judge's expression was frozen, making it difficult to gauge him, but I could tell that he was attempting to listen to everything carefully. While I felt mildly optimistic, I knew for a family case there is no certainties, especially when my siblings' lawyers have labeled me as the uninvolved detached relative. They countered by stating that I have left the house as an act of self-exile and did not wish to actively maintain the premises, and so Mark and Ava, in order, took steps to care for my parents' estate. But as the court proceedings continued, I noticed flaws in their narrative. Denying the documents which proved my exclusion was not possible. There was no explanation as to why I was not informed of the sale before everything was completed. The facts were obvious. They had made an alliance against me, and now they were attempting to rationalize it. The trial lasted for weeks, each day more exhausting than the last. For some reason, when the trial had ended, I did feel an overwhelming sense of relief. I had put my best foot forward. I pushed through for myself when all hope seemed lost. Now it was a matter of waiting for the judge's decision. When the verdict was announced, I was seated in the courtroom, breathing heavily. The judge spoke steadily as he delivered the verdict. On the basis of evidence, Sarah Wright has proven that she was unjustly omitted when deciding to sell the family house. The court holds Mr. Mark Wright and Ms. Ava Wright liable for using poor judgment by excluding her from the sale and the proceeds. Hence, Ms. Wright is entitled to 1/3 of the profit from the sale and damages. My chest felt lighter as a feeling of relief settled over me. It was not the money that mattered, just the knowledge that I was not unreasonable in feeling so deeply betrayed. I had triumphed. I knew, of course, that the breach with Mark and Ava was probably unmatched in its severity, but at least I had gained something. Closure is the word I am reaching for. Dignity, and most importantly, Closure. As I walked out of the court, I did not turn my head to look at my siblings. I dared not. The pain was too great. Still, I knew I had made the right decision, even though it would cost me my siblings forever. I began to reconstruct my life in the upcoming weeks. A portion of the settlement had made it possible for me to rent a modest apartment, thus helping me get back on my feet. However, the most significant transformation came from the emotional burden that had been lifted. I could finally feel powerful. Fighting for myself and winning made a big difference. I still had periods where I reflected on everything I had lost, not just the house, but the family that disintegrated around me. Over time, however, I started realizing that the most important thing I had gained back was my self-esteem. I wasn't just the sister who always got neglected anymore. I was a person who stood up against injustice and made sure my voice was heard. More than anything, that new realization is what made the difference for me.